Well, good morning, Southern Oregon, and welcome back to the Real Estate Show. I'm Alice Lema, a broker here in Southern Oregon with John O. Scott Real Estate and your host of the show. Today, we get to welcome back Guy Giles from Mutual Mortgage and Mr. Brad Bennington, the head of the Builders Association of Southern Oregon. The gentleman will be bringing us up to speed on what's going on in new construction and also home loans. And we're going to talk quite a bit about what's going on in the Valley. Everybody driving around, watching all the new construction. And Brad Bennington of the Builders Association of Southern Oregon will be talking to us about that and also what it really costs to bring housing into Southern Oregon. It should be a great conversation. While we're waiting for Guy Giles and Brad Bennington to step into the studio, let's take a quick look at our weekly statistics. This week, we're going to start with Josephine County. This is year over year residential sales. Prices are up this week, year over year, in Josephine County, 4%. With the average single family home costing $461,290. The number of solds year over year in Josephine County for residential are down 33% from this time last year, with 10 residential closings. And the number of listings in Josephine County are up 1% year over year, which is about neutral. There were 272 active listings on SOMLS in Josephine County this week. Klamath County prices are up a whopping 55% this week, year over year in the residential market. The average single family home in Klamath County now costing $391,499. Congratulations, Klamath County. The number of solds year over year in Klamath County were neutral. We didn't have any change from this time last year. There were 4 closings on SOMLS in Klamath County this week in the residential market. The number of listings year over year in Klamath County were down 18%. We had 188 active listings on SOMLS in the residential market in Klamath County this week. Jackson County prices were down year over year, but only 2%, which is basically neutral. The average single family home in Jackson County this week costing $452,759. The number of solds year over year in Jackson County, hold on to your hat, folks. The number of solds were up 75% from this time last year in the residential market. There were 35 closings on SOMLS this week. The number of listings were down in Jackson County, 6% in the residential market year over year. There were 548 active listings on SOMLS in Jackson County. So every week we watch the micro movements so that we can track the macro movements, and we're still short of listings, but there's a lot of listings coming. We've talked to a lot of agents, and I know that many people have decided to put their homes on the market this spring. Might want to beat the rush before everybody else, but right now let's talk to Brad and Guy. Well, we're so happy to have you back, Guy Giles and Brad Bennington. Welcome.
Howdy.
Welcome to the Star. Yeah.
Good morning.
Brad, you're with the Builders Association here locally.
Builders Association Southern Oregon, that's right.
Builders Association of Southern Oregon. And there's a lot of construction going on right now. It's kind of hard to get the trades to work on regular existing homes. Can you maybe just bring us up to speed about what's going on with the new construction?
Sure. So Alice, as you know, Builders Association Southern Oregon is a self-funding nonprofit that provides education, advocacy, and policy support to the building industry and the communities that we serve. We serve our professional community, the residential community, and we're also an information resource for our regulators and legislators. And the reason that that people are having difficulty getting contracting services goes, as we know, as Guy knows, goes all the way back to that period of time between 2009 and 2013, politely called the Great Recession. During the Great Recession, nationwide, we lost 50% of our contractors to economic attrition. Here in the state of Oregon, we lost 2/3 of our contractors. And in 2 counties in Oregon, we lost 75% of our contractors. That was Deschutes and Jackson County.
Wow.
So between roughly 2008 and 2013 here in Jackson County, we lost 75% of our contractors. On top of that, we have a shortage of skilled workers, so that today in 2024, we have less than 40% of the skilled workforce that we had 15 years ago. And 50% of that 40%, literally half, are aging out of the workforce within the next few years.
Oh, wow.
So that's on the supply side. So we literally have 25% of the contractors that we had back in 2006 and 7 to do all the work. And the other thing that we have, Alice, is we had something happen September 8, 2020. We had that arson fire that has been labeled here, the Almea fire and also the Obenchain fire. But the Almea fire caused the greatest loss of housing in the history of the state of Oregon by fire.
Wow.
We lost thousands and thousands of homes in less than, probably less than about 12 hours. We lost almost 3,000 residential structures. So the good news is that our builders have been working at just mock speed since then and have rebuilt almost 60% of the residential units that were lost, which is way ahead of what happened in Paradise 2 years before that. We remember that fire in Paradise called the Camp Fire. And in Paradise, you can go down there and you'll see that not even 15% of those homes have been rebuilt. And that event happened 2 years before our event. So our builders get a lot of credit for that. But what does that mean? It means that anybody that can lay breath on a mirror has been extremely busy and running at warp speed. So Alice, that's the answer to your question is number one, on the supply side, we don't have enough contractors, we don't have enough skilled laborers, and we have had a demand that has been off the chart since 2020.
And we haven't recovered from the great crash. That's something I didn't quite realize. I figured we were all back up and running on the labor side.
Well, the thing is that you have to remember is that general contractors are a very rarefied group of people. You can't wave a magic wand and create them. In other words, you can't just give somebody a couple of months of education and hand them a set of tools and send them out into the marketplace. It literally takes years and years of experience to create a successful contracting company. And when we lose those assets, it takes years and years to rebuild them. And the other thing, and this is more of a, I guess, an economic environment or an education environment kind of a discussion, but about 30 years ago, the education industry in Oregon decided to no longer support blue collar education. So when Guy and I were young guys, we had shop class. We were teaching young people how to use tools, how to actually build things and be creative. That's the world I grew up in. When I graduated high school, and all the young people that I graduated high school with a long time ago now, but we were able to go right into the workforce and be productive. That's what I did. That's what most of my classmates did. We came out of high school on our last day and went right into the workforce and began earning a living. So the education industry quit supporting blue collar vocational education about 30 years ago. Now they're starting to come back to that. But again, over that 30 years, there was really very little support for our industry, which explains the labor shortage that I just described to you earlier.
Interesting. Wow. And so it's all full circle, and there's really not time to recover.
There's no magic wand to create contract.
Yeah. So there's a lot of construction going on.
Yes.
So how are they getting that to happen?
Yeah. So what we have is we have companies that have actually come in from outside of our market. So one of the things about the Rogue Valley that's been true for a very long time is it's a little bit of an insulated market where
Mm-hmm.
the homes that were built here were built by the contractors who were based here. So, all of our local builders, like Mahar Homes, Bob Fellows,
Galpin.
WL Moore,
Mm-hmm.
you know, Martinoff, all the builders that were building our homes were local builders. But because we're in the midst of a housing crisis, what's happened is that we've attracted the attention of large out of area builders. So we've got builders like DR Horton that are now in our market. And you may have noticed the construction project at Northgate, that 500 apartment unit complex is being built.
Yeah.
That's being built by a company out of West Lynn, I believe. So that's kind of the answer to your question. Yes, there's a lot of construction going on, but some of these larger projects are being done by contractors that are out of area that have come into our market.
So that's super interesting. DR Horton, I knew from watching the financial news. I was shocked to find out that they were building in Medford.
And not just building, buying property. So again, the biggest barrier to home construction, home development is buildable property, buildable lots. And the cost of a buildable lot here in Southern Oregon is very, very, very high. Probably Guy can speak to that because he does the lending side. So
Yep.
when it comes
After the
to
break.
acquiring buildable lots,
So we're
the
going to have to
majority-
take a quick break, Brad. Sorry, this is so interesting. We let it
Yeah.
go too long.
Yeah,
We're talking
yeah.
to Brad Bennington. We'll be right back. Well, welcome back, Southern Oregon, to the Real Estate Show. We get to talk to Brad Bennington and Guy Giles today. Brad Bennington is the head of the Builders Association of Southern Oregon here locally, and Guy Giles is with Mutual of Mortgage here locally. Thank you, gentlemen, for being back on the show.
Hey, well, thanks. I want to make sure we do mention, all the good stuff that Brad and his outfit are doing over there. And one of the things that they do to raise money to help, God, every time I look at these guys, every time I go to a meeting or go to a seminar, they're always talking about affordable housing, trying to get it, and that directly impacts our kids. We're a little bit beyond that now, where we've bought a house, maybe moved up, and we're kind of there. But we see the strain on the young people that are trying to buy houses, and one of the things that the Builders Association is doing is a poker tournament coming up. So if you like to play poker, or even if you don't, you just want to come out and support a really good cause, you might talk about that just a little bit, Brad, because honestly, these guys are the ones that are fighting in Salem every day for us.
Yeah, it's a great organization. Do you want to speak to that fundraiser, Brad?
You bet. Yeah. So again, we're a self-funding nonprofit, and the event that Guy just mentioned is our Basso Poker Tournament, Poker Palooza. This year we've got room for 100. Well, we had 150 spots that were open. We've got a lot less than that now, but the proceeds from this event is our primary funding mechanism for our governmental affairs work that we do. So it's really, really important. And the funding for this is what gives us the ability to work with our legislators, which is especially important right now because the short session starts February 5th. And this is going to be one of the most important sessions for housing that we've had in years and years and years. And we can talk more about that later if you want to.
Okay. Because the Builders Association of Southern Oregon is self-funded.
Correct.
Yep. So
absolutely correct.
Before the break, we were talking a little bit about how we ended up in this pickle with not very many labor sources, but there's still a lot of construction going on, and I didn't realize that so many of these companies are not local.
That's correct.
Are they bringing their own people in, or are they using?
Yes,
they are.
Yes. They have to. We don't have enough here. That's why they have to bring their own people in, is that we don't, all of our assets are already employed. Again, the Almea fire, just to give you an example. So we'll just use round numbers to make it easy. Let's say that the Almea fire wiped out 2,500 houses. All right, let's just say 2,500 houses. It's more than that, but just to make the math easy. And let's say that we have a maximum capacity of 500 houses a year. And actually, it's not that. If you look at the building permits, it's actually a little over 400, but we'll be optimistic and say it's 500. So because I went to Oregon Public School and I learned how to do math, I can take 2,500 houses that we lost and divide it by 500 houses that we can build per year and come up with a number of 5 years. So if all we did, Alice and Guy, is rebuild those 2,500 houses that we lost, that's 5 years of production for our market, building as fast as we possibly can. Does that make sense?
Yep, it does.
And that's just to restore what we lost, let alone all the additional housing and work that is required to keep our community operational.
So we're not only not keeping up, we're way behind.
Yeah, I've got a soundbite. So I don't know if you're familiar with Oregon Housing Needs Analysis, but it came out of House Bill 2001. And I'm going to give you a little quote from an open letter that our OHBA president is going to publish here shortly. But this is just one paragraph. Do I have your permission to read it for you?
Sure.
Okay. Oregon housing policies have seriously limited production for decades, which has inflated the cost of all housing statewide. According to the recent Regional Housing Needs Analysis, Oregon would need to build 584,000 new homes just to provide for current demand. Nearly 25% of these homes are needed right now. That goal would require Oregon's builders to produce 30,000 to 40,000 new homes every year. For context, we were able to produce less than 20,000 units in all of last year.
Oh, wow.
End of quote. And
Wow.
those are factual numbers based on the Oregon Housing Needs Analysis that was produced according to Senate Bill 2001. So, again, this is where we talk about something that you and Guy already know, and which the governor acknowledged when she was sworn into her office. Oregon has a housing crisis, and it's no more evident than it is right here in Southern Oregon. Here in Southern Oregon, we have one of the biggest gaps in the United States between the cost of housing and the average wage. It is harder here, and Guy mentioned our young people earlier. It is harder here for our young people to afford housing than almost anywhere else in the United States based on the average wage in Southern Oregon.
That's incredible. That's just incredible. And it's also a factor of the people that are retiring here and they're paying cash, and that drives the price up as well. The population pressures of Southern Oregon, how are we going to address the housing just for the people that are coming up when we don't have what we need for so many years?
Right. So Alice, that's a great question. So we need a little background on it. So Oregon is the most land use restricted state in the entire United States. Back in 1972, Senate Bill 100 was passed, out of which came a statewide building code, but also came a statewide planning law, which is administered by LCDC and the Department of Land Conservation and Development. And it requires certain things be done in a certain way for every community in the state of Oregon. But all residential construction has to happen within what is known as the urban growth boundary. And the urban growth boundary is defined as this area where all the development for any particular city has to occur within this boundary. Can't be done outside of it except under very limited circumstances. So let me give you an example. Here in Medford, to expand our urban growth boundary by 4,000 acres, which we did back in 2017, we added about 4,000 acres to our urban growth boundary. Take a guess on how many years it took us to get that urban growth boundary expanded. Unless you guess 19 years, you'll be wrong.
What?
It took us 19 years of working with the city of Medford and the Land Conservation and Development Commission and the Department of Land Conservation and Development and all of the other organizations that want to limit growth. I'm not going to mention who they are, but I will tell you what you and Guy already know. There are organizations, very well-funded and organized organizations here in the state of Oregon that are dedicated to zero population, to zero net growth. They don't want growth. And it's very easy to obstruct growth in the state of Oregon because the threshold for an appeal is so low. So this is where I come back and say, yes, it really did take 19 years to add
Wow.
4,000 acres to our urban growth boundary, but that's not the end of the story. The wildfire map that was brought by Senate Bill 762, which was sponsored by State Senator Jeff Golden, is clawing back a lot of that 4,000 acres, saying that this is now in a wildfire risk area where building is going to be strictly limited. So even though it took 19 years to add that 4,000 acres, by the time we get through this wildfire mapping conversation that we have to have because of Senator Golden's bill, we may wind up with less than half that.
Yeah. And is it true that there's more than 50% of the state of Oregon that is in some ownership of a government agency of some kind?
Here's a better number for you. And Guy heard a presentation from our CEO, Jody Hack, at the Chamber Forum last Monday. And she presented a statistic that's going to shock a lot of people. Out of all the land in Oregon, less than 0.006% is available for residential development. In the
Wow.
entire state of Oregon, one of the lowest population density states in the only 4.3 million people live in this state. That's only slightly smaller than the entire nation of Germany, right?
Wow.
0.006% is all of the land in Oregon that's available for residential development. And again, this gets back to where we started, Gail, where buildable lots are the single most restrictive element of land development. And also buildable land is the most significant financial element of any home. The dirt is the most expensive element of the home, and it's the hardest to create and the most expensive to create.
Well, I know we only have about a minute left here, but isn't the second most expensive piece of building a house probably all the fees that are tacked onto it? Just in order. I mean, I think she showed an example where it was over what $120,000 on a $500-something-thousand house just before you even lay a brick, just in regulation.
Right.
So
right, you're right, Guy. Regulatory costs are extremely high.
Well, and we're going to talk more about that. We're with Brad Bennington of the Builders Association of Southern Oregon and Guy Giles of Mutual Mortgage. We're going to be taking a quick break to say thank you to our sponsors, John L. Scott, Ashland and Medford, Guy Giles Mutual Mortgage. Thank you, Guy. And our local Rogue Valley Association of Realtors. We'll be right back after a quick word from the sponsor. You don't want to miss any of what Brad Bennington and Guy Giles have to say. We'll be right back. Well, good morning again, everybody. Welcome back to the Real Estate Show. Just a quick reminder that this episode with Brad Bennington and Guy Giles will be repeated tomorrow on our new radio home, the ACE, AM 1300, and it will be repeated at 8 a.m. in the morning on Sunday. So getting back to what we were talking about, Brad and Guy, the amount of land available for development in Oregon is remarkably small. It's less than 1% for residential development. Is that right?
It's less than 0.006%.
Oh my goodness.
If we had 1%, we'd be in tall cotton, Alice.
Tall cotton, that's good. So then does that mean that it's fruitless to try to fix the housing crisis in Oregon?
It's fruitless to try to fix the housing crisis without legislative support, which is why this session is so critical. You know, again, Guy heard the presentation from our state CEO Jody Hack last Monday, and we really need our legislators to step up and bring common sense and aggressive reform to the development in industry. If we cannot bring in land, like for instance, it takes our average developer 3 years from the time they purchase a piece of property until they can create a product that they can sell to the public. So it takes extremely deep pockets. It's extremely risky. And the threshold for appeal is so low that anything could throw a monkey wrench in it. It's only this way in Oregon. It's not this, the reason that you can buy properties that are so much less in Alabama or Texas or North Carolina is because they don't have these incredibly restrictive land use laws that we have. But laws can be reformed by the legislature. So we're really encouraged that our governor declared that we have a housing crisis, and we have the ability to tell her, if you work with us, we can show you how to fix this crisis so that we can provide access to everyone for safe, sustainable, and affordable housing, but we need legislative help to do it. The system that we have is broken and it needs to get fixed. And until it gets fixed, we cannot meet the needs of Oregonians for housing. We just
Well,
can't.
We actually do have a governor right now that
yeah, exactly. I was
wants
just
to address this. So I think it's probably important because she's going to be getting hit from all sides, trying to get her to step back from it. So I think if you have time, call. You know, you may not agree with all of her politics or all of what's coming out of Salem, but I do believe that her heart's in the right place when it comes to this particular issue. And the more just regular people that could get in front of her and say, hey, look, thank you for doing this. I have kids here. We really need this. You know, that might give them the fortitude to be able to move forward with pushing on this thing.
Yeah, at least it's an agenda item for a change. And going back to the construction that's happening locally, some of it is what we call alternative. We have some modular construction happening and also the 3D printer technique. Can we talk about that, Brad?
Sure. So let's talk about the 3D first. So 3D is kind of a cute word for concrete. What it is it's a big pump with a computer controlled articulating arm that squirts concrete out at the end of it. And oddly enough, the Russians made this form of construction really popular back in the 40s and 50s.
Did they really?
If you go into Moscow or go into any of these Chinese cities, you see these multi-story buildings that are they're all built out of concrete. Concrete for a construction material goes way back. So what you need to understand is that to have a concrete house, you have to have an energy carve out because Oregon has an energy code that all conventional construction has to follow. And our energy code is the most restrictive in the United States. So if you want to meet the energy code and have a concrete house, those two things don't work. So to have a concrete house, you have to have a carve out for energy code compliance. Also, there's a lot of other limitations that go with that. So again, most people, in terms of comfort and so on and so forth, you're going to want a conventionally built home. But the so-called 3D printed homes, the benefit there is that you have less labor involved because you're just using a concrete pump. On modular housing is built off-site, brought to the site, and it's more efficient because so many of your variables, you know, bad weather and all this stuff are done in the factory. But actually, what's really happening as far as that type of thing, Alice, is that we have companies that are building sections of houses in a factory setting, bringing those to the job site where they are very quickly assembled by the on-site crew, and that technology is happening a great deal. One of our local material suppliers, Par Lumber, has a product that they call OptiFrame, where all of the framing members of the entire home are computer cut and labeled and bundled and shipped to the job site.
Wow.
And we have a great example of that. One of our local builders, Travis Snyder of Snyder Creek Development, is doing a development out off of Kings Highway, close to South Stage. These houses are going up amazingly quick. He's literally pouring a foundation every week. So there are advances in technology that are making construction much more efficient than they used to be. But again, still, the biggest barrier to construction isn't the construction part; it's the land component. Land component, that's the biggest issue that we have on building and development.
Yeah, and the fees and the access and all that.
Right.
So let's talk a little bit about automation since you brought that up, because that was one of my questions. There's a lot of digitalization happening in industries, and it seems that in our area, at least, because of the labor shortage, it's right for automation, robotics, things like that to kind of come in and fill the gap. what is the Builders Association thoughts on that process?
Yeah, so we participated in that quite a bit. So let's talk about panelized construction. So panelized construction has been around for a long time. And what that looks like is that all of the structural elements of the structure are they're digitized and become part of a very of the large plan, so that the manufacturer can accurately manufacture all of the structural elements that need to go into it. Then they go to the factory and they're split out according to wall sections. So all the door openings go in, all the window openings go in. Oftentimes even components, depending on the level of sophistication, components like wiring and plumbing can even be installed in the factory. So when that panel gets shipped to the job site, it's got a number and a location. So all the on-site workers have to do is place the panel, secure the panel where it goes, attach all the other relevant panels, and things move along far more quickly than they used to. You don't have the worker getting out his measuring tape. You don't have the worker cutting the member. You don't have, so it eliminates thinking, measuring, and cutting, right? Those three things.
Wow.
So the worker at the job site, he becomes more of an assembly technician than the traditional carpenter. Traditional carpenter, he has to visualize the project. He has to estimate what kind of wood he's going to use. He has to measure it. He has to cut it. He has to install it. In this type of a system, all he has to do is look at the assembly manual. This part number goes here. That part number goes there. Attach it. The inspector inspects it, and it's really accelerated the construction process. And again, you see that in the Northgate project, and you also see it with the OptiFrame system with Snyder Creek's development out off of Kings Highway.
Wow, this is fascinating. So the construction worker of the future could work for Amazon or IKEA. Could you see some of those big companies getting into construction using automation and robotics? Is that a possibility?
Well, it's unlikely because they don't like risk, and construction is one of the most riskiest business that you can be in. Those larger companies. Here's where I'll tell you something that you already know, and Guy knows this, and you know it. Careful, cautious, circumspect people don't grow up to be contractors. We're all cowboys. People, reasonable, cautious,
entrepreneurs.
careful people. Yeah, reasonable, cautious, careful people don't grow up to be contractors. It's too economically dangerous. They won't do it. So,
okay.
but these automated systems that we've been developing, what they're going to do is in many situations they're going to help us provide the housing that Oregonians need in a much more efficient manner. But for the custom home, you're still back to the traditional carpenter. So if you're looking at, we'll pick on our friends at Mahar Homes. If you're going to buy a Mahar home, you're going to be building a custom built home, built the way that you want it, with the window where you want it, with the door where you want it. And this requires, the traditional skill of the traditional carpenter.
Okay, so there's still a place for that well-rounded, experienced person to do custom construction.
Well, you mentioned the retirees that are moving here mostly from a state that starts with the letter C. So
well, we only have a couple quick seconds, but we do have another section.
Yeah. So those people are coming up here to buy what? They're coming up here to buy their dream home that they're going to live in for the rest of their life. And they're going to be buying these custom homes. So the efficient housing.
But I'm sorry. We just got to take a quick break. We're going to be right back with Brad Bennington and more of Guy Giles. Well, hey, Southern Oregon, we're back with Guy Giles and Brad Bennington. And right before the break, we were talking about some of the alternative construction and how that's working in Southern Oregon.
Yes.
And Brad, you were going to finish a thought there having to do with the automation and possible robotics in construction.
Yeah. So all of these different housing products serve a different part of the Oregonians that live here in Southern Oregon. There's a place for modular housing. There's a place for optimized housing, and there's certainly a place for custom housing. You know, and again, our friends that are retiring here in Southern Oregon, most of them, they want a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house with a 2-car attached garage, parking for an RV, a little bit of a yard, and a nice cedar fence that goes around their property. That's what they want. And most of that product is still going to be custom built. So what we just asked the legislature for is give us the tools that we need to meet the demand that people have. And again, going back to that earlier statistic that we talked about, Gail, we're right now in the state of Oregon, we are short 584,000 homes.
Wow.
584,000 homes is what we're short in the state of Oregon for the demand that we have right now. This is why we need legislative support for the common sense reform that our industry needs. This is why our coming short session is so important. And this is why our poker tournament is so important, is it creates the support that we need to have these conversations with our legislators.
So where can people donate or get funds to you to support?
Yeah, we've got sponsorships available. Yeah, buildso.com. Buildso.com is our website. And they're welcome to reach out to our office at 541-773-2872. You can Google us. You can, I mean, we're available any way you want to reach us. And we're happy to provide information, advocacy, and policy, and anything anybody wants to know, just get a hold of us.
Great. So, Guy, going back to talking about money, what happened with the Federal Reserve Bank this week, and how do you think it'll affect us here in Southern Oregon?
Well, it's dragging out our rates dropping a little bit. We have numbers from Monday that have already been revised 100,000 jobs lower. It's just I don't know who's spreading all the information, but we've had every job number get revised. So basically what you get is you get a headline and it says we created 3 billion jobs last month and this is the greatest economy in the whole wide world. And then somebody comes in and they look at the real numbers and they revise them down the next month. But the problem is that the headline damage has been done. Everybody thinks that we have a really strong jobs market going on right now. And in fact, we're just getting part-time jobs. We're getting, and I don't want to be all doom and gloom, because whether you love it or not, we do have an election coming up this year, and there will be some incentive to put some pressure on people to, buy some mortgage-backed securities, lower the rates so that everybody feels warm and fluffy going into an 18% credit card rate instead of a 28% credit card rate. And like I said, I wish politics were not part of the whole thing, but the Fed's kind of unrealistic want for where inflation, where they want it, we're there at this point, and they need to start talking about lowering rates. So we were thinking it was going to be as early as March, but they're saying right now that it's not going to be that early. So maybe they thought they wanted people feeling a little more warm and fluffy towards November.
Well, there were a lot of layoffs nationally this week.
Yeah, I think UPS, the union, they negotiated some $187,000 per employee. And I don't know if that's benefits and everything all together, but now they're laying off 12,000 people. So, I mean, there are consequences to everything. I want people to be paid well for what they do, but it's just, it's strange right now, just because they're starting to enter a lot of seasonal adjustments in that were never there before, or different kinds, like that population adjustment we talked about a while back, which sounds actually more ominous than it actually is. But that it's just it's the perception that the Feds didn't do what the Fed had set out to do, which was cool things off, and things are cooled off, and it's time for them to step in and give people a little bit of relief on their car loans. Like I always say, that doesn't directly affect our mortgage rates, but it is an overall sign of inflation. And when the stock market's going crazy and everybody on the surface thinks that everything is fine, a lot more money flows to that, and less money flows towards the mortgage-backed securities that do affect our home loan rates. So still do expect to see a pretty good reduction in rates over this next year. but maybe just not quite as soon. And they are better than they were not that long ago, and even where they were in December. So
Mm-hmm.
overall, we're hopeful that we can get some people some relief at the closing table.
And
When
you've got quite a perky business in the last few months. Is that right? It's turning around. You're getting more applications.
Yeah, last year was tough, and that's the funniest part. I don't know if you have your numbers back yet, but because
Yes, I do.
yeah, everything was lower during the first part of the year, but then turned around and just started excelling with appreciation. So I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about that locally. I look at things like that a little bit more nationally.
Well, there's so much to talk about, but one thing I'm studying right now is Southern Oregon's reaction to election years. I could not find any data, so I am going back and creating the data, and I'm looking at the year before an election, the year during the election, and the year after. And I'm back down to the 90s, and I'm going to go to the 70s because I want to see what happened before that 1972 law that Brad was talking about. But Southern Oregon has pretty consistently had a little bit of an uptick, but nationally, real estate doesn't seem to really like election years. It's kind of interesting.
Man, well, I mean, and it just, I guess what I think will help us this time is it has been so ugly previously. I mean, I think it's going to be harder and harder to go back and look at historical data when they keep changing our local data. Like
Yeah, you can't keep changing the data.
yeah,
The data is the data.
and basing what you do on it. You remember it was about a year ago, I believe it was last January, where their 80,000 new jobs weren't new jobs. They were immigrants, illegal aliens, whatever you want to call it, people that were already working here that were already had jobs, but they just all of a sudden decided to count them from 2 years before. These people had always had jobs. Those weren't new created jobs.
Oh, so they changed
January
the
of last year.
criteria.
Yeah, so they're tweaking everything to make the numbers look like what they want them to look like, and then when they finally, everything settles out, by then the headline's gone and everybody's looking to the next headline
Mm-hmm.
because there will be new job numbers coming out, and then when those new ones come out, then they revise the old ones. And I wish I don't know, I just want them to do what's right for the people. Let's have real data out there and not keep changing the doggone things so
Mm-hmm.
that we don't know how to fix what we're doing, get the politics out of it. And I don't know. I'm not as frustrated as I sound right at this moment, but I'm really looking forward to the day where we get a little bit of relief for our home buyers.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And it's interesting that in 2023 in Southern Oregon, our sales, at least in the residential market, were about what they were in the crash that Brad was talking about. We normally have 4,000 or 5,000 sales, and we were in the 2,400. So it was a really slow year, artificially so, but it did seem to start perking up in the fourth quarter.
Well, and I have no doubt as we get closer to the election that it will perk up. So if you can afford it, definitely talk to one of us about buying a house, because once that feeding frenzy's on again, and then you're offering
Right. See, and that's the
$1,000
thing. When the rates go down, the price, it's a teeter-totter of
Yeah,
sorts. It's not, exactly direct, but yeah.
I'm not seeing contracts right now that sellers aren't helping out at some fashion. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure that's happening,
The
and maybe
sellers are accommodating right now.
yeah. So it's time to maybe get a little bit of a buy down. With the buy downs right now, we're giving permanent buy downs, not the 2-1s, permanent buy downs, paying a little bit in points that are actually pretty darn decent rates at this time.
Nice, nice. So guys, if somebody wants to get a hold of you, what's your cell number? And he does answer his phone.
Every time. Unless I'm physically at church, I will answer my phone, but it's 541-944-6987.
That's great. So Brad Bennington, thank you so
Yeah.
much for being on the show. We'd like to have you back again. Just a wealth of information.
Well, I want to thank Guy so much for inviting me on your show this morning. Guy, thank you for your kindness And Alice, thank you so much for having me on. So it's always nice to visit with you.
Great. We're going to have you on again. And thank you, Guy, for being on.
Hey, thanks. And we will talk to you later and hopefully see you at the poker tournament.
Yes, yes.
Poker tournament.
Local Builders Association of Southern Oregon. Have a great weekend, everybody. We'll be back again at 10 a.m. next week on the ACE 1300 AM. Have a beautiful weekend.